Not quite.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very, very much indeed for turning up for this session. So we're going to have a panel discussion, a bit about warehouse strategy, a bit about the logistics industry, and also we're going to be talking about the best charity in the world, known as Transaid. So what you've got here is you've got a selection of different people from across the logistics sector with some very different experiences. But the one thing that all four of us have in common is that we are ambassadors for Transaid. So we'll come on to tell you a bit about that, but we're going to start with some introductions. I'm moderating the panel. My name's Clare Bottle, and I'm the Chief Executive of the UK Warehousing Association, which is a trade body with 1,000 member companies. And the role of our trade body is to talk to the government and media about warehousing, to raise industry standards, build community, and help our 1,000 member companies. So that's me in a nutshell. I've worked in logistics for just over 30 years. And it's a real honour for me to be accompanied by these other ambassadors, and I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves. So, Lynn, over to you, please. Would you like to tell the audience about yourself?
So I'm Lynn Parnell. I'm a logistics consultant with the Logistics Partners Consultancy Limited, and we specialise in technology and systems within logistics, but making sure that people, process and technology all work together. I started in logistics and operational roles as a graduate management trainee also about 30 years ago.
And now we've got two mics, so I'm going to come to Mike S first.
Hi everyone. Mike Sacker. So I'm head of supply chain for Libra Europe Consultancy. We're a small change management consultancy. Bob, one of our owners, is there. Give a wave, Bob. So we specialise in helping customers solve problems, fixing problems for them. So again, people, process and systems. I think we do quite similar things, but we really focus on the kind of process side of what we do. I've been in logistics for over 30 years. A new Carmen.
The worshipful company of Carmen.
I'm a new freeman of the worshipful company of Carmen. So over to the other.
And Mike D.
Yeah. Hello everyone. My name's Mike Daly. I come from an operator background, so I started my own logistics company 40 years ago, I'm afraid. So grew it, specialising in clothing transportation. Got to about 1,000 staff and sold it to Clipper Logistics. From there, we went on to grow it to 10,000 staff over the next 15 years. And then I stepped down when GXO bought us 2 years ago. So now I'm involved with a small space brokerage business called Warehouse Space and been a lifelong ambassador of Transaid.
Fantastic. So as you can see, quite an eclectic mix of different sorts of backgrounds. So I think we'll have a good opportunity here to maybe explore a bit about what's going on in our industry. But I'd also like to just point out right now that there will be audience questions. So for anyone in our audience who's got a really tough, difficult question that you'd like to pose to these lovely panelists, you might never see all four of us on stage together again. So this is your chance. Make sure you think up a lovely question to ask, and I'll come back to the audience later for that. But I'd like to start by thinking about warehousing and maybe more broadly the logistics industry, and just maybe ask our panelists. I'll come to you first, Lynn. I want to ask about what you think are the big challenges at the moment. So what kind of things would you say are going on in logistics that might be causing problems for your business or for your clients? What's the story here?
I think a lot of things we're seeing with our clients at the moment is there's a lot of uncertainty. Within the logistics sector, there's a lot of driving down of costs. And that, especially in the third-party logistics sector, that's very difficult. When we're reducing that pallet rate, we've got less money to spend, but actually we're expected to do more. So technology can provide us with that solution. We can do more with less people, but the struggling to get investment is quite a big thing at the moment.
Right, so it's always been a fairly low margin kind of industry, hasn't it? And then the added pressure on cost, where we're expected to do more with less. I guess it's a good topic for IMHX, where we see so much automation here, right?
Yeah, so those automation solutions can make a huge difference to a business. So a lot of it is about understanding the benefit they can give us so that we can get that real ROI case to our funders and to the boards.
Does that resonate with you as well, Mike?
Yes, absolutely. I think one of the sort of challenges we find with a lot of clients is around the uncertainty again. So over the last few years, it's been a lot harder to predict both the demand from your clients and the supply. So supply chain resilience is a real challenge for them. Sort of demand can't be predicted that easily, and that leads to making it really hard to plan your levels of your workforce. You have excess inventory because of the uncertainty in there, and that's tying up all your working capital, which means that you have less cost to invest elsewhere and actually some of all this wonderful technology you've got here.
Right, so you've got to have lots of capital tied up in stock in order to have a resilient supply chain, but that means that capital's not available for other opportunities.
Exactly, for other areas to improve your business as well. So yeah.
Quite a conundrum, yes. Okay, thank you. And Mike Daly, what would you say?
Yeah, so at the risk of repeating it, I think cost pressure. I know we've got driver shortages, etc., but they've always been in our sector, in my opinion. But the cost pressures are staggering today. You know, the cost of a truck has probably doubled since pre-COVID. The cost of rent and warehousing has doubled since pre-COVID. Electricity supply doubled, and yet the actual end customer, from a 3PL point of view, still wants it for the same unit cost as he was getting pre-COVID, and it just doesn't stack up. So I'd see cost pressure is by far the major influence on the sector at the moment.
Interesting point there. So I think we're hearing alignment from the three panelists, and from my own point of view, we surveyed UKWA members in June and asked them what are the big concerns that you've got for the next 12 months, and cost pressure came out top. So that was the thing people were most concerned about. Interestingly, the second item was about workforce, so the availability of labour and the retention of labour. Once you've got people working for you, how do you keep them? We hear that there are a lot of NEETs, people who are not in employment, education or training. So there ought to be a lot of people available there to take up vacancies, but something's not working because there's a mismatch there between businesses saying they haven't got enough people, and perhaps that's connected with some of these rising costs. As you've both, well, as all three of you have rightly pointed out, the cost of rent and vehicles and fuel and energy are all going up, and the cost of labour is going up as well, particularly because we've had, from a Labour government, as you would expect, some increases in national insurance and minimum wage, which have made employing people more expensive as well. So what are we going to do about that? Are there any innovative ideas? I'm going to come back down the way, so I'll start with you, Mike Daly, because you don't always answer last. What would you say are the innovations that might help us with some of these challenges?
Well, good. Obviously, we're a show with automation, but it's fine. I think if you're a baked bean manufacturer, you can predict what your volume throughput for the next 10 years is going to be, and you can invest. It's very hard for 3PLs to invest in high levels of automation, because historically contracts in this sector are 3 to 5 years. You just can't get a payback on that, and if the customer leaves you after 5 years, you're holding a bespoke piece of equipment that's not very easy to reutilize. So it's hard for the industry, in the 3PL industry, to use automation as a way out of this. Training your workforce. I mean, I go around warehouses like you do every week, every month. I still see very poor utilization of workforce. I still see people milling around, waiting for pick sheets to come off the printer. There's still a lot of efficiencies that can be driven from a manual processed warehouse. I hate to use the Amazon word, but those workforce are like little robots. They've got work picks ahead of them for the whole of their shift. And if the truth is, other small 3PLs could learn the lesson of product improvements from the likes of the Amazons of this world.
But you do sometimes hear some pushback against that. Some of the public rhetoric in the newspapers, for example, would say that kind of focus on productivity is damaging to people's well-being. How would you answer that?
You don't have to work in an Amazon warehouse. If you're young, fit, healthy, work in an Amazon warehouse, because you're going to get your 20,000 steps up a day. But pick another career if you don't want to be walking up and down aisles all day, I'm afraid. Yeah.
A nice controversial answer there, Mike. I don't disagree with you.
Yeah.
And for you, Mike Sacker, you mentioned process. How does productivity fit into process for your clients?
I think it's the same thing. So I think one of the reactions, especially around peak with clients, is to just overload with labour. They book their labour early. They book the agency labour because there's a finite resource. But what they don't do is ensure that when they bring that labour in, they can operate productively. And this comes back to sort of having the right data and information to understand what's the expectation to get the productivity to meet the demand for the client for those periods. So I think you need to, it is back to the basics. All this technology is wonderful, but fixing the core basics of your business around process, training of people is fundamental. And this technology is wonderful, but there's also, it's accessible to low-code RPA type processes. This is accessible to everybody through the Microsoft platform. There's so much opportunity with clients to just take out some of these manual repetitive processes, and it is accessible to everyone, but people, I mean, most people look at ChatGPT and they use it for helping reword something, but the power of these power apps is phenomenal, and people need to embrace that.
AI, okay, so that's part of the solution.
Sorry, I said that's the way. AI, yes.
No, well, it's very
low code
topical.
AI, and that's what you need to think about, is because that. So
Can you explain a bit more about what that means?
low code AI is. See, now you've asked the question. I sounded really knowledgeable there for a second. So within the technology, within ChatGPT and within the Microsoft Power Apps, you have the ability for it to make, it's like machine learning, so it replicates common administrative processes, and then it learns from those mistakes. So it can read documents, it can take key information out of them. All these activities where you've got someone there typing in sales orders, trying to type in information from PODs, all of that can be automated through something that's accessible to anyone who uses Microsoft as a platform.
Interesting. So not just using AI as a kind of interface for improving what you've written, but using the same tools in a more productive way.
Yeah.
So productivity of people and productivity of systems.
Exactly, and absolutely, yes.
Fantastic. Lynn, can you build on that? Because I know you've got a lot of expertise in systems.
More than me, obviously.
I think what we find, I mean, logistics still is driven by Excel spreadsheets in so many very large companies, very small companies, whether they've got SAP installed or whether they have no system at all. And that's a reliance and a comfortable factor that people find, and sometimes taking them away from those is the way that we're trying to go forward. But we also need to attract people to our profession. It's not something, a lot of people don't want to go walking around a warehouse anymore with a bit of paper, being driven purely by a statistic that you must pick so many cases per hour. So we've seen a customer that has a very manual process that says they struggle now at peak to get agency staff, because they come in and they go, oh no, I want a handheld terminal. I want something that's got some more autonomy. So we have to look at some of that from being able to recruit on what we're doing. And statistics are important. We do need to measure how fast people are doing things and make sure they're efficient. But, you know, we don't want efficiency at the point of where we are picking cases really, really fast, but then actually we're damaging or picking the wrong thing in the customer. And I do see that with some businesses. They're very driven. Amazon, sadly, in certain respects, is driven in that way. Some of my customers, we can't afford to let our customers down to that level of percentage because it's very small and it's a brand. I think also making your warehouse become part of your wider business, whether you're a 3PL or whether you are running your own distribution, and we work with customers from both, you need to feel part of that business, understand what that business is trying to do. Way back when I worked for BOC and M&S, I had to go in store once a year for a couple of days. That's really important to understand where my logistics is coming from. I'm working with an e-com at the moment. We launched on Hobbycraft TV this last week, and the whole warehouse watched the 30-minute program. Anybody else would look at that and go, we've got people aren't picking for 30 minutes. But they feel part of that brand. They feel like they want to work there, and they've retained their staff because of that.
Interesting. So some of it is like a kind of trade-off, I guess, between, you know, what time are you going to spend instilling those emotional kind of bonds with the people that work for you, and what time are you going to invest in getting them to become more and more productive, sometimes with systems, sometimes through process. Mike?
I'll come back on that. I mean, I don't want to sound like a slave driver. I mean, I'm a great believer you have to invest in your people, and so you have to bring them along with you. And
Yes.
you know, a motivated worker is going to be twice as efficient as someone who's just using as a slave horse. So
Definitely.
I'm a great believer in motivation, but you have to have some.
You have to have a base mark.
What gets
Yeah.
measured gets managed, basically.
Yeah. And I think it's how you measure it. So we do a health check, and one of the things we found on one is there was like, why is this guy so much better at hitting his targets every single day than everybody else? That's because that guy came in, got some intelligence here, but went through the picks and picked out exactly which ones he was going to do. Now, there's an intelligence factor there that the others hadn't got.
There'll be a supervisor next week.
Yeah. But, you've got to give everybody... So definitely we need to measure within logistics and systems and manual processes and things around, but it's not... You don't always have to measure to the nth event if you are then causing problems elsewhere in your supply chain. And that's the same with any KPIs. You've got to work out what are you rewarding, because you don't want to reward behaviour in one part of your business that then causes issues elsewhere.
Yeah. But like you said, you have to go and work in stores occasionally. At Clipper, we had 43 depots. That's 43 managers.
Yeah.
They had to spend at least 8 hours a week. MBWA, management by walkabout. They had to be on the warehouse floor, seeing what was bottlenecking, see what was inefficient. And so many of the big 3PLs today, the poor old general manager of the site is stuck in his office. Working from an Excel spreadsheet or greater. And he's not out there seeing what's happening on the shop floor.
Control towers have caused issues with that, I think. And I love it when you see somebody on the night shift. Because actually the night shift really appreciates somebody coming and seeing them and seeing what they're doing.
Mike, anything you'd like to add on that?
Well, I mean, so the bit you're mentioning about the training and getting them on board. So it is a buyer's market out there. So a lot of these areas, if they don't like where they're working, they can move to the warehouse next door and do warehouse picking is not you can be trained to do that anywhere, anything. So you do need something else to retain them. And the cost of that staff turnover for businesses is phenomenal, because you've got to then, the training of all the people who've got to come in and get them to work effectively, they've got to go through that learning curve. You keep them, there'll be people who'll be back next time and work for you.
So we've talked quite a bit about how to motivate people. And at the UK Warehousing Association, one of the tactics that we use to motivate our own staff is that we make sure that they believe in the values that we demonstrate as an organisation. And an example of that is our support for Transaid. So employees want to be part of our team because they're inspired by our support for Transaid. So I'm going to come on now to talk to our panellists about where you got involved with Transaid. So Mike Sacker, do you want to start? When did you first come across Transaid and how did you get involved?
So I've been aware of Transaid for many years, having been in the industry. I became an ambassador probably about 3.5 years ago. I'd always wanted to get involved, but prior to working for Libra, I was an independent consultant. And being on your own in terms of how you can contribute to Transaid, it was harder. But sort of having an organisation behind me here. But I've been passionate about transport my whole life. The work they do in Africa is phenomenal. Until I got more involved, I wasn't really aware of the scale of the deaths related to driver accidents over there. And once you're involved in that, you actually realise how much good that Transaid are doing over as part of that. The way that we end up heavily involved, so Libra co-sponsor the Transaid Cup football tournament. It was in its 3rd year this year, which is a phenomenal event. So we've raised sort of £60,000 over the 3 years of doing that. And that, that's a real pride for us that we can contribute to that in that way. So
amazing.
And I'm going on a bike ride in 2 weeks' time from Cork to Dublin. So if anyone wants to sponsor me, I'll be available.
Cork to Dublin. How far is that, Mike?
Too far.
Good answer.
So it's about 200 miles over 3 days. So
Good luck. Good luck. I'm sure people will want to sponsor you. Lynn, what about you? When did you first come across Transaid and why do you support them?
Yeah, so I kind of was aware of Transaid from very early on after it started, because I've been in logistics 30 years and I've been an independent consultant since 2000. And via CILT and Princess Anne and things, I'd heard about them. But it was really when Women in Logistics started in 2008, 2009. And Clare yourself did a presentation on Transaid. And it really resonated with me because as a child, I remembered Blue Peter had raised money for Land Rovers. And I'd done my collecting silver foil or whatever it was for that year, and we'd bought some Land Rovers. And then I'd heard that, 4 or 5 years later, they were all left rotting because nobody could maintain them. They weren't suitable for the roads. And I felt a bit disillusioned by that. And when Clare was presenting, I think you were a director of the trustee of Transaid at the time, and Clare presented this where we are helping people transform their own lives. So if you go to the Transaid stand, you will see the bicycle ambulance. If you are a woman who's had a child, you would not want to be transported in the UK in that bicycle ambulance over a 3-hour journey to get to hospital. But if you lived out in parts of sub-Saharan Africa where you were walking to hospital otherwise, that bicycle ambulance can go where it needs to go. It is, a lot of them are volunteer riders. It's fit. People can actually maintain those. So that really got me interested in Transaid, and I started supporting them 2008, 2009, with time with the UK office and helping with events. And then I became an ambassador in 2015.
Amazing, thank you. And Mike, you know about the bicycle ambulances because you built one. Tell us about your history with Transaid.
Well, I suppose it goes right back to when Transaid first started. I was one of the early sort of sponsors of it, but I did nothing. I was, 100 miles an hour, 80-hour week, and so I just gave some money. And it wasn't until later years that when my foot came off the pedal, did I realise just what they were doing with the money. And let me tell you, every pound is a prisoner. The ladies that are on the stand here today, they'll be sharing a hotel room somewhere in the outskirts of Birmingham to keep the costs down. And obviously we get donated the stands by the organisers in Forma. Thank you very much. In recent years, the last 20 years, I've got more involved as an ambassador. I try to do as many of the shows as possible. We were trying to tell the public just what we do. And I said, really, we should have one of these ambulance bicycles in the UK because, because we get them made in Africa. They were designed over here by, I think it was Leicester University. And so we sent the drawings out to Africa and they make them. So we are giving some local employment. So there wasn't opportunity to import one back to the UK. So I took these drawings and scratched my head. And I had a friend of mine and we made one. It's not quite full size. It's only 3/4 size because it's got to fit in the back of my pickup truck to and from the shows. But it has been known to cycle a few people around the shows at the end on the last afternoon before now. So we take that to the show so people can see what we spend their money on, and for £600 that is life-changing. I've been fortunate enough to go out to Zambia a couple of times with Transaid and to see a village who's got a little shed somewhere in the corner of the village with their ambulance bicycle, and there's 2 or 3 drivers, they call them emergency transport drivers, who take pride in looking after that. And one does daytimes, one does nights, one does weekends, whatever. And they'll take, as Lynn said, take a pregnant child, a pregnant mum, or a child with malaria. And of course, they've got to, within 24 hours, you've got to get some treatment for that child. Otherwise, the fatality rate under 5 is pretty high. So these ambulance bicycles are really doing what they say on the tin. For £600, it's just and you can get your name put on them even. So you can have your own sponsored Libra bicycle going through the deserts. But of course, other than that, we are still, promoting ourselves to the industry, that we are doing a lot of driver training safety. Not in this country. We've got great organisations like Generation Logistics and Road to Logistics doing the UK, but the amount of drivers we've trained in Sub-Sahara is phenomenal. And it's the old
9,000.
adage, give a man a rod and give a man a fish and you feed him for a day. Give him a rod, train him how to use it, and you can feed him for life. So we've been fortunate enough to get driver trainers out of the likes of DHL, GXO, Wincanton, Bibby when they were going. They'd go out there for a couple of weeks and their company would pay their wages while they're gone and pay for their travel. And then those guys would train, let's say, a dozen locally driver trainers. And then those guys would come back to UK, but those 10 drivers they've trained will go on to train another 100 drivers each, if you know what I mean. So it is a domino effect. And the ripple is phenomenal. It's tens of thousands over the years of driver trainers. And, if you've ever been to Africa, I mean, you cannot go on a trip and not witness a lorry that's turned over into the hard shoulder and turned over because the driver fell asleep because they don't have driver hours. You know, road fatalities are very high. Pedestrians are walking in the same piece of road, and we're not talking dual carriageways. We're talking, you know, sort of one step up from mud tracks. So anything we can do over here to educate them on the dangers of road usage is a win-win, really. Yeah.
So there are lots of opportunities to get involved, right?
Yeah.
And I'll just tell a bit of my own story. So I first came across Transaid at a trade show, a bit similar to this. And only a couple of years later, they had a project going in Zambia, and I got the opportunity to go over as a Transaid volunteer to work on a project in Zambia. And I saw some of what you're talking about. In particular, I was struck that they do have a maximum weight for HGVs in Zambia, but it's higher. I think it's about 56 ton, but it's not complied with. So I went to observe a weighing station where they were checking on that. And in the copper belt, Zambia is an important place for the mining of copper. It was routine for those vehicles to be operating at 62 tons. Well, with poor quality roads, and vehicles that are overweight, that meant that the driving conditions were much more dangerous than you'd be used to over here in Europe. And couple that with the fact that it's traditional to buy your driving license on the black market, that doesn't really make for a lot of road safety. And yet Transaid miraculously has been able to build trust with local communities in order to raise the profile of the importance of training and using transport skills as a way of saving people's lives, improving road safety, and making access to healthcare easier. All of that really inspired me when I first learned about it, and it's been an absolute privilege to be able to continue to support them as an ambassador. So I'm wondering now if we can take some of what we've talked about in terms of Transaid and thinking back to some of the challenges we discussed earlier on this panel. Is there anything you think we could learn from Transaid about, you know, the ways in which European or UK logistics should operate? Are there any sort of bigger lessons from them, maybe even philosophically, about the human condition? Mike, what would you like to say on that?
So last year I did the Transaid Kenya bike ride.
You're a glutton for punishment, aren't you?
Yeah, so I've come back for it. So hopefully Ireland's a bit simpler. I don't think it will be. Weather won't be as good. But one of the things for me when I went out there was it's quite a humbling experience. So we're obviously cycling. I mean, obviously 30-odd lycra-clad people cycling through Kenya is quite an experience for they don't see that very often. But these people have very little out there, but they just seem so content and happy. And the thing I kind of brought back there was probably our sense of entitlement over here, and actually that just being happy with being thankful for what you've got is something that I think that we can really bring back. And you know, say some of the jobs that within logistics are fairly mundane, monotonous, and menial. But how can you turn it around so people are actually thankful and you know, take pride in what they do? They want to do the job, and and are thankful for that work. That would be. I don't know how we do it, but.
But it is a privilege to live in a society and an economy where work's available like that, and perhaps you were able to see that differently having visited somewhere else.
I'm probably being controversial, you know. Some of the jobs that sort of British people don't really want to be doing some of those jobs, which you know. So it is some of the people who are coming over who are taking those jobs that other people don't want to do. But you know, so we need a way to kind of be proud of wanting to do a job and bringing that to us. So yeah.
Good point. And what about you, Mike? Anything that you would like to see people learn from Transaid to apply here?
Very rarely am I speechless. I think I mean, like you said, I've seen kids wearing T-shirts that I probably wouldn't even wash my car with. Do you know what I mean? So we have become a very materialistic society, and you know, I know I'm probably there wouldn't be a need for 3PL, but we don't need all the thing we buy over here. We should try to look at the reuse and mend and the repair and get more life out of everything. I think the average piece of clothing in our wardrobes is worn 5 times or some statistic like that. You know, they'll wear it 55 times, and I think we've become a bit too much of a throwaway society in this country.
And I think that has an interesting lesson for logistics, doesn't it? Because certainly one of my observations, I visit a lot of warehouses, I do now see a lot more repair, reuse, management of recycling. And I think the logistics industry has an important role to play in trying to sort of wean our society and our consumers away from being so materialistic towards a more circular economy. And there's definitely a learning there, isn't there?
I do think 3PLs, it's whether you call it added value or whatever else, but 3PLs can do a lot more. They can do a lot more make a living out of it, but offer services like spot cleaning of returned garments, polishing up shoes. If people have tried them on, it's the wrong size, but they've scuffed them. 3PLs can make a living out of doing that sort of work. I mean, we used to love it at Clipper and DTS. It was probably more profitable than actually doing the single pick out in the first place. It was the return reprocessing that we were more profitable for us. So I think it does go hand in hand. Reuse, recycling / servicing, 3PLs offering that service goes hand in hand.
A good point. Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Lynn, what do you think?
Well, I think, Mike's talked about the driver training programs that Transaid really started with, and it's actually over 60,000 drivers have now been trained both on trucks, buses, coaches, motorcycles. But one of the projects that I think is quite interesting is in Uganda, where they focused on there was shortage of drivers and and also some females were struggling to get work. And female drivers in Uganda were even more unusual than in the UK. And they focused on that in one of their training programs. And at the last figures, I've got 81. I'm sure there's more than that now, that women were trained as professional drivers out in Uganda and now have a new living and being able to support their families. Some of those where they're the main wage earner because of AIDS and the effect that that's had on some of their families. And I think we can look at that in the UK, and Mike and myself were talking earlier, about looking at when we've got a driver shortage, don't always go to where you expect and normally recruit from. And Road to Logistics are doing a wonderful job of getting, some ex-offenders, some homeless people, and giving them training. And that's over 550, I think, we got the latest figure. And I think we should learn from that in the UK. Look outside of your comfort factor of where you normally recruit if you've got a shortage, but actually then help to educate that extra. Don't expect them to all come fully qualified to you, but actually set up some schemes where you can actually train your own workforce. It's expensive, but quite often they stay longer. There's a 94% success rate of when they 85% get jobs, and 94% are still in that job 12 months later, So these schemes work.
Amazing. Yes, I love that story about Uganda as well because of our connection through women in logistics. And there's another more recent project Transaid have been doing where they're doing roadside eyesight checks. And they've got some really cool tech where they can make pairs of glasses within, I think it's about 20 minutes. And I just wonder whether there's something that we could learn here from that as well, because not everybody knows when their eyesight's failing them. And even though here in the UK we probably have more ready access to opticians, do we really tap into that as much as we should? I'm not sure. So I think we're going to wrap up our questions in a moment, but first I just want to check whether there's anything from the audience. So do we have anybody in the audience that would like to ask anything either about the logistics industry more broadly or specifically about supporting Transaid? I don't think I'm seeing any hands going up. Maybe it means that we've given so far a very good account of ourselves and answered the questions in most people's minds. So I think what I'll do next is I'm going to go along the panel and I'm going to ask for advice. So let's imagine that somebody in our audience here might be thinking or considering offering Transaid some support as a corporate partner, as a donor, or even as an ambassador like we are. What kind of advice would you give to an audience member about, the potential pros and cons of supporting Transaid? Mike?
Yeah, listen, we'd love corporate sponsors tomorrow, but that's a big step. 15,000 per annum is quite a big ask for people from day one. History tells us that just get involved in some little way. A prize for a raffle at one of the trade events, sponsor someone to do a cycle ride or something. Christmas card appeal, you can get your name, your logo in 15 trade magazines for £500-600. Just start with a little way. We'll put you on our newsletter. We won't bombard you. We'll just tell you what we're doing on a monthly basis. And if you want to do more, do more. If you can't afford to do any more that year, that's fine too. It is the industry's main charity. Every business in this country has an obligation to do something, give something back. Be it their CSR mission statement or whatever. It's nice to give something back, and why not give it to a charity where they're making their living in? So I think, baby steps. We're not looking for corporate sponsors overnight. We just want people to get involved and just hear a little bit more about us. And I think our story will do the rest. We find historically people want to get more involved as the years go by. And that's fantastic,
Amazing. So everybody ought to get involved, and it doesn't have to be intimidating. There's always lots of small opportunities which might grow into something bigger. I think that's a great answer to start with. Mike Sacker, anything you'd like to add to that?
So probably the first thing is sort of investigate Transaid, find more about, when you see all the things that they do, that's when the passion for what they do helps. Second thing is, talk to the people at Transaid. They are the nicest people in the world. They're really open to talking to us. Probably the third thing is, so the football tournament came out of an idea we had. So they offer things to do, but have those conversations. If you're doing something, something you're passionate about outside, anything like, talk to them about that, and they'll be really happy to help develop something out of that.
Brilliant. So there are plenty of things that Transaid already organises that you can get involved with, like the bike rides that you've done. But there are also opportunities where if you've got a great idea of your own for raising money and raising awareness, Transaid be open to that, because they are the nicest people in the world. I agree with you on that. Lynn, what would your advice be?
So I think, I'm a very small business, but we support with our time, helping with fundraising. But if you're a large business, then being a corporate partner is really worthwhile. And also our corporate partners do amazing things, like some of their employees go out to some of the projects, and that's how we run some of the projects. So that's really important. And also they donate vehicles for the driver training schools. We cannot do driver training programs without buses and lorries and forklifts to be able to perform that training. So you can help in the smallest way by just having a bake sale at your work and donating that money to Transaid, right the way through to becoming a corporate partner, providing some of your staff on a scheme, and then also giving us a truck. All the way through.
So lots and lots of different opportunities. Yeah. If you haven't got a lot of money, but you might have some skills or some equipment, that would also be very welcome. And if we can just wrap up, I'm just going to add a little reminder of something that I said before about, using the connection with Transaid to demonstrate values within your business. Of course, there are lots of charitable opportunities for businesses to get involved with. And you might be asking yourself, well, why would we pick Transaid specifically? Not only are they the loveliest people to deal with, but also I think you can demonstrate your values as a logistics business even more powerfully when you partner with a logistics-based charity. So with a charity whose story is aligned with your own objectives as a business. So loads of reasons there to get involved. If you want to learn more, check out the Transaid website, visit Transaid here on their stand, and the ladies are here in the audience. But for now, I think we're going to wrap it up. Thank you ever so much to my amazing panelists, Mike, and Lynn. Thank you.
Clare.
Thank you.